Just because I fail at something or just because I'm struggling with this aspect of my work, that doesn't reflect on me as a person. And I think that's the most important thing for grad students to kind of understand.
Welcome to Hello PhD, a podcast for scientists and the people who love them. Today on the show, we talk to a current graduate student about how to be unhappy in grad school. Stay with us.
And we're back. This is Hello PhD, episode 58. I'm Joshua Hall.
And I'm Daniel Erneman.
And we'll discuss the human side of science and life in the lab. Hey there, Daniel.
Joshua, what's happening?
Not much. Another week, another guest.
This is kind of a record for us, I think.
2 weeks in a row.
Okay, that's a small record, but it's a record. It counts.
We have with us this week Deirdre Sackett. Hi, Deirdre.
Hi. How's it going?
Good.
Excellent, excellent. Josh picked up a special beer in your honor today.
Ooh.
So, Deirdre, I have to tell you, this is, I think, the first time ever we've had a guest on the show when I asked for a beer recommendation and they actually gave me one.
Yeah, usually it's, I don't really like beer.
Yeah, I'm not a big beer fan.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, where do we get these people?
See, I felt kind of awkward. I was like, oh, well, I'll drink most beers, but I like this particular beer if you'll get it to me.
No, it's good because we never get this style of beer. So tell us what we have, Josh.
Yeah, so Deirdre told me she especially likes a Hefeweizen.
Yeah. All the listeners who also like Hefeweizens are like, they never talk about that.
58 episodes in.
It's all IPAs.
First Hefeweizen. Can you believe it? All right, so what we have, although Dan, you know my penchant for fruity beers.
Fruit flavors.
So what we have this week is the Smutty Nose Brewing Company from Hampton, New Hampshire. This is the Peach Short Weiss.
And I had to look up smutty nose because I don't understand what that means.
It sounds kind of dirty.
Yeah, it sounds like there's like dirt on somebody's nose and that I'm eating a beer.
Well, there's a picture of like a seal on the...
That's informative.
Maybe there's a smutty nose seal.
I'm looking it up now. Talk amongst yourselves.
One thing that I found interesting about Smutty Nose is they actually have a division of their company that's called Smut Labs. I guess that sounds even...
That sounds even worse.
This is not a good,
I don't know what they were thinking.
So what Smut Labs does is that's their experimental section where they try out really random types of beer. And apparently the Peach Short Weiss, the short means a short run batch. So they make all their experimental beers in very short batches, and that's where this one came from. So...
And are you getting a lot of peach out of it? It is on the spectrum of a sour beer. I don't know if you've had sour beers before, but
yeah, Deirdre, you're the Hefeweizen fan. What do you think?
Yeah, well, so for anyone who thinks that Hefeweizens taste like bananas, which they do not, by the way.
This does not.
This definitely does not taste like bananas. It's very sour and very fresh and very tart, and I like it.
Yeah, I'm not a typical sour beer fan at all, but this is okay. I don't mind this.
Good choice.
All right, science in the news. Are you ready?
I am ready for science in the news.
Do you like my jingle?
I love the sound effect, yes.
All right, Deirdre, Dan, do either of you wear a fitness tracker like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or a Jawbone?
I do not.
Neither do I.
But you know of these things, right?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we actually talked a few...
I have a jawbone, but it's like in my jaw.
Nice. I have a Fitbit, but it's in my...
I don't have one.
I think we talked about this a while back. I think it was in our fitness in grad school episode.
Oh, yeah, around New Year's, I recall this.
Yeah, how it would be interesting to note how far you walk in a typical day in the lab. How one thing we miss being out of the lab is the amount of activity that we had when going to a desk job.
I still have a treadmill desk. I still have it. I just don't have a Fitbit to track my movements.
Well, so there was a recent study in JAMA, Mama JAMA.
Yep.
The journal of the American Medical Association that came out last week. And they were looking at the effect of wearable technology combined with lifestyle intervention on long-term weight loss.
Okay. Can we make some predictions?
Go for it.
Okay. The technology does nothing. That would be my guess.
Okay.
I may be cheating because I may have read this story like yesterday, but I'm also going to guess that the technology does not do anything.
And I didn't look ahead because you told me not to look in the show notes to see what we were going to talk about. I'm guessing it doesn't make a difference because it feels like a vanity metric that really you're going to get tired of after a little bit and you'll stop wearing it and no difference. But tell me the opposite. Tell me that Fitbit, I should invest in their stock.
Well, so what the researchers wanted to know was to address the growing obesity epidemic. Waka waka.
Wow. Good phrasing.
So
How much of that peach beer have you had?
So clearly these wearable technologies are growing in popularity quite a bit. I mean, how many people do you see walking around with their
And
activity
Apple
tracker?
Watch now. We should mention Apple Watch has their
the
own.
new Apple Watch. That's
And
right.
all the knockoffs too
Yep.
for
Yes.
us grad student budgets.
That's true. I don't see a lot of grad students with Apple Watches.
You got the pedometer with the LCD screen. What is it? Not an LED screen.
Yeah. And I've actually, Dan, I have some friends who work for companies where they actually give out these Fitbits, and you can get incentives for wearing your Fitbit and reporting your number of steps and your activity.
Yeah, they wanted to do that on my company health plan, and I walk on a tread desk. Like I do think it's important to stay moving. And the person came up, the health insurance provider, and she said, "Oh, you can report on your steps and get a discount." I was like, "Go away right now."
But that's fascinating, right? Because here we have health insurance providers who usually do a great job of knowing what is going to impact their bottom line as far as healthcare costs, who are buying in and saying, we believe wearing these monitors, are actually going to improve health in some way.
Now to the science.
So basically what they did was they enrolled 471 adults between October 2010 and 2012, and they monitored them for 2 years. All right. So during the first 6 months, what they did was they basically helped people get on a lower calorie diet, helped them institute some physical activity habits. And then they set them up with this website to log their activity and their diet. All right. So after the 6 months, all of the participants who were still in the study reported losing weight. Okay.
Okay.
So now at this point, though, they randomly assigned half the participants to a self-monitoring group, right? So this group continued to stay on the diet, stay with the exercise, but self-monitoring.
No peer pressure.
Okay. The other half was randomly assigned to the activity monitor group, right? So they were all given some they didn't name the official brand, but some
Probably a Fitbit, yeah.
probably, which would monitor their activity and report it for them. So the results, after 2 years, so for a year and a half more, they monitored activity and other metrics.
So going into this extra time, everybody had lost weight.
That's right.
And then they just divided them up
Yep.
to who is going to self-report and who's going to use a Fitbit.
Well, so I'm happy to report at the end of the 2 years, on average, the group who did not wear the Fitbits, who self-monitored themselves, lost an average of 13 pounds than they were at the beginning.
Good.
That's pretty good.
All right. The group who wore the activity monitors weighed only about 8 pounds less.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
They didn't gain weight because they were like, look how many steps I took today. I'm going to eat a donut.
That's not what they saw. Everybody lost weight,
Okay.
but apparently there was a significantly increased weight loss in the group that did not have the activity monitor, which was surprising to the researchers.
Am I wrong about this notion that, like, if you go for a workout, you feel like you've earned the chance to eat 3,000 more calories? You're like, oh, but I can have this because...
I went on a walk, so
Yeah.
I'm going to eat this whole gallon of ice cream.
I do that. I don't know if anybody else...
Well, it's interesting. That's what you guys thought of, because that was initially what the researchers thought, was that theoretically using the monitor and getting that instant feedback on their activity might have led them to eat more. But that's actually not what they saw at all. And one of the things that was really interesting was they noticed individuals wearing the technology generally exercise less than people who were in the group that was self-monitoring.
I wonder why that is, just because you think you've done enough by seeing the number go up?
Well, they didn't know exactly.
They tied the Fitbit to the dog and it looked like it went up a lot, so...
Well, one of the things that they speculated was that perhaps if individuals had physical activity targets, they were more aware of how far they were from their target if they were monitoring it. So maybe they said, not going to make it today, so I might as well not try.
Well, I've taken 30 steps today. I'll call it quits.
But
So I actually read this article online yesterday. Yeah, the article that kind of summed up the scientific article basically was saying it depended on the people's personalities. Like if they saw their fitness goal wasn't being reached, they just kind of gave up. They're like, well, it's not worth it for me. I don't really want to,
I can't get there, so I may as well not try.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was an interesting kind of people study in the end,
Yeah, absolutely. And so in an interview with one of the researchers, and I should mention too, this was a study from researchers at the University of Pittsburgh, but they said the people using the monitors may also have assumed that in a roundabout way, the technology removed responsibility from them for monitoring their energy intake. Dr. Jakasik from University of Pittsburgh said people may have focused on the technology and forgotten to focus on their behaviors. So interesting.
Technology. I've never liked it.
Can't do everything for us.
No, it can't.
it's the robot uprising controlling our exercise.
There you go.
In honor of segues, we'll see how this one flies.
You got me a scooter?
No, I didn't. No, that'd be great. Deirdre does behavioral neuroscience. This must have been required reading in your program this week.
It was.
It's all about behavior, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we have Deirdre Sackett here, and the reason we have Deirdre, besides being a very pleasant human being,
Oh, thanks.
she penned an article that showed up in the science blog Sizzle. That's Sizzle like science plus Izzle.
Izzle, or more like, like
Izzle.
Yeah.
Sizzle, yeah. Sizzle. We'll call it sizzle.
sizzle, sizzle.
And this article was called How to Be Unhappy in Grad School. Sounds sad.
No, I've got that one figured out. I did it. Would you like to buy my book?
Deirdre, why do you want us all to be unhappy in grad school? Are you unhappy? You don't seem unhappy.
I'm not unhappy, and I'm going to tell you why.
Well, before you do, why don't you first just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Deirdre Sackett. I'm a fourth-year grad student in the Behavioral Neuroscience Department at UNC. I'm in Dr. Regina Corelli's lab, and I study the neurobiology of decision-making. And specifically, I'm looking at impulsive choice behaviors, which I think is really cool because a lot of us are impulsive.
We don't know anything about that, do we, Josh? No impulsive decisions here.
It's not why we drink beer every week. Nope.
Yeah, so I'm all about, figuring out why we make the decisions that we do. Well, first of all, why did we decide to go to grad school, or why did we decide to do this research? Why did we decide to spend 5 years of our life, or 6 years, or 7 years going, and studying these topics that mean a lot to us?
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it wasn't for happiness, and I think this was the take home from your article. But walk us through. The title was very provocative. How to be unhappy. So tell us how you got started. What does that mean?
So effective communication begins with a good lead, which means you need to hook your audience, right? And so that was kind of where I was going with that. But I actually got inspiration for that article from a oatmeal comic, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with oatmeal. The Oatmeal.
Big fan.
Correct.
I've read the comics for a long time. As many bodily function jokes as he can possibly fit in, but he's really funny. So.
Yes, many poop jokes.
Yeah.
So I was a little hesitant to admit that I got the idea from that comic, but it was, I believe, a couple weeks ago that I read his newest comic, and it was called How to Be Perfectly Unhappy. And I was like, ooh, I want to read this because it's a catchy title. And read through it, and he got the idea from a essay in the Wall Street Journal, again, kind of on the similar topic of being unhappy and being okay with it. And in the end, Matt Inman, the creator of the oatmeal, kind of, his bottom line is, you don't have to be happy or unhappy with what you do in life. Just have meaning in it. Find it meaningful. And that's what you need to aim for, not happiness. And so kind of clicked in my mind. I was like, oh, that sounds like grad school. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of sat down on the couch and wrote from there.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. It feels like every time you come home from graduate school and you see your family, or you call your mom on the phone or whatever, and they say, oh, are you having a great time? And you're like, what? I can't say it's a great time. Is that what you experienced?
Yeah, you don't really know what to say to people who ask you, oh, are you happy with your grad school experience?
School? Like, I love it.
Yeah, so I kind of, wax poetic in my article about, when someone asks you a question, are you happy? That kind of limits your response to, yeah, or no, I'm miserable. So that's kind of what I wanted to challenge in my article. And
yeah, I mean, it almost seems like as a culture, we're obsessed with happiness, right? That's no matter what you're doing, that's really extent of the questioning that we have for people. I know I'm guilty of that too. When my kids go to school, I'm like, oh, did you have a good day? Yep. Well, most
Right.
days are very nuanced, right? Yes, there were good parts and there were bad parts, but forcing someone to make a snap decision that encompasses in one word the entirety of experiences I had in this day, and especially when you apply that to something like graduate school.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just in graduate school, it's in the culture. We have rights, inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Like, this is the ultimate, to be alive, to not be chained up somewhere, and then to try to be as happy as we can. That's our destiny,
It's
right?
a lot of pressure, right?
It is. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what was cool about the oatmeal article, that happiness isn't always the goal and shouldn't always be the goal. And just because you're not happy with something in the moment doesn't mean that it's not a fulfilling experience in your life. So I have a couple specific questions about some of the things you're writing. So one thing you mentioned in the article is you bring up this really common image of a graduate student as being overworked and strung out and over-caffeinated, underpaid perhaps. Do you think that's an accurate assessment of real grad students in real life?
So that's a great question. And I must admit, I kind of, stuck to hyperbole there just for the sake of the image that it portrays. But I would say on a day-to-day basis, probably not. But there have definitely been times where either me or my friends or, people who I know who are in grad school have gone through, a week or two stretch of, oh God, I need to work, these long weeks, long hours.
Grant deadline, poster presentation, and
Yeah.
you're doing qualifiers. I don't know, you're doing lab meeting that week. And it all stacks up. It always is the same week for some reason.
Oh yeah. No, it all just kind of happens like at once, and then you have a lull for a couple weeks and then it all kind of ramps back up. So I wouldn't say that it's an accurate portrayal of a grad student, but it's definitely a common image, I would say, if that helps differentiate.
And it does feel seasonal to me. There are the graduate student in first year or second year where you're taking classes and you kind of show up to labs sometimes is different from the grad student who is trying to write a dissertation or who is in their third year trying to figure out, why did my project fail and can I put another one back together in time to graduate?
Exactly.
Yeah, a thing that came to mind for me was if you surveyed a group of people and you did one of these experiments where you said, all right, I'm going to say something and you say the first word that pops into your mind. And if I was to say graduate student, I wonder how many people would immediately say a negative word and not a positive word. And if that's true, well, then why do so many people go to graduate school if there's this common thought that it's just this miserable time? And it made me wonder if those stereotypes are truly based on some reality of how maybe being a graduate student is a totally miserable pursuit, or if knowing that those stereotypes exist, if sometimes we in the lab and science community almost feel the need to gravitate towards living into those stereotypes. Maybe we think, oh, I should be burned out, I should be complaining, or I should be disgruntled. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I definitely have some strong thoughts on that for sure, because to go to grad school, you have to be a certain type of personality. You kind of have to be, I don't want to say type A, but really, driven, really organized, really, XYZ. And then when you get to grad school, you see all your peers, working really, really hard, and you say, oh man, I have to work as hard as them because they're being successful, and that's what I have to do. And so I think it just kind of snowballs. And of course, there's always, as you said, the stereotype that we keep in mind. And so I don't think that really helps calm us down.
Yeah, this is like the Facebook effect where everybody else other than you is on vacation just because that's when they're posting their status. But like the person 2 labs down just got a cell paper and I haven't gotten any papers. And
Exactly.
you're seeing all the successes, but you're not seeing everybody in the kind of drudgery and failure that is extremely common.
I would say it's also a form of competitiveness in a way, not malicious in any way, but it's being competitive to benefit yourself. You're saying, oh wow, these people are doing this, and this. I got to do this, and this to compete in a way.
Up. Maybe I need to stay later. Maybe I need to work a little harder.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this TED Talk that I saw just a few weeks ago. Actually, my team watched this, and it was by this guy, Sean Aker, he's a researcher, and he spent some time at Harvard. I don't know if it was his grad work or something, but he talked about how he was from Texas, and then he ended up as this student at Harvard, and how on the first day, he just felt super excited and super fortunate to be, wow, I'm here at Harvard. This is so cool. But he realized how quickly no one then seemed happy to be there, and how as human beings, especially in our culture, we have this tendency to never be satisfied with accomplishments, right? So maybe we were successful in high school and we go to college and, we immediately focus on, I've got to do well in college, I've got to compete. And then we do well in college, when we graduate, we get into grad school. And rather than stop and be excited, like, wow, I get this opportunity to work with these really smart people and try to understand how the world works, instantly we move the goalposts to what success actually is defined as in our minds. So success is always over the horizon. We never allow ourselves to actually bask in the the joy of our own accomplishments. That's always something off in the future.
Yeah, you're not currently excited about getting that National Honor Society award in high school, Josh?
Still every day.
Because you worked for it, I'm sure.
I polish that bad boy in my office every day.
No, but you're right. We don't pause and usually we'll be excited for a little while, and then that next goal shows up on the horizon, and then we run for that. You're right.
So I guess along those lines, I really want to get at what I thought was really fascinating. That is the crux of what your article got at. And it seems like, you mentioned that whole notion of asking graduate students or anybody if they're happy is way overly reductionist. And you talk a little bit about how grad school is a lot of work and there are a lot of complicated things that happen there. I guess talk a little bit about how you think grad students can best focus on the positive in the midst of maybe a lot of inevitable setbacks.
Yeah, if we're not supposed to be happy, what are we supposed to be? Why are we going to graduate school?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a fantastic question. And a lot of people really struggle with that because, they get kind of stuck in the mire of, I have these deadlines. I have all this, I have that. I have, all this other things going on in my life beside my grad work that need to be dealt with. So it's a lot of things coming at
I'd like to go to the gym or see my mom.
I'd like to get groceries. Yeah. I've definitely had to put off a couple of shopping trips because of my work. But yeah, I mean, I guess.
How do you, I imagine you sometimes have experiments that don't work. Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, absolutely. For sure. Yeah. And to kind of deal with that, you kind of take a step back and say, just because I fail at something or just because I'm struggling with this aspect of my work, that doesn't reflect on me as a person. And I think that's the most important thing for grad students to kind of understand is you're going to fail in grad school at something. Nothing goes 100% perfectly. But that doesn't mean you're a bad person. That doesn't mean you're a bad scientist. It means you're a human. And humans make mistakes. And you just got to pick yourself up and kind of move right along. Because if what you're doing is in the end meaningful to you, then you can fail a million times and still find meaning in that.
Yeah, and I thought that was really the fascinating and really inspiring part of the oatmeal comic was I may not be or appear happy in this moment, right?
I'm not giggling while I run my gel.
Yeah, but you know what? That doesn't mean that what I'm doing doesn't provide, it's not meaningful work for me. And that's really what keeps me going and what is important to me, not this sort of transient happiness feeling, but that, I really believe in and I'm passionate about the work. And the two don't always go hand in hand. You can be unhappy but still find meaning in your work.
Absolutely. For instance, I was working on an experiment that had a pretty high rate of failure. And as I was learning the experiment too, I was failing time after time after time. And I was getting really down on myself. I was, really sad. I was like, oh man, is grad school right for me? I had all these, really not so great thoughts. And then I got my first successful data point, and that feeling of joy was just like through the roof, like, oh my gosh, I did it.
I can do anything.
I can do it. Yay. And, as the year or two progressed, and I collected my data and, prepared the paper and everything, it was ups and downs for sure. But, in the end, it was meaningful to me because I saw the data that I was producing through the failures and the successes, and kind of that net sum of all of that was really special.
Yeah, and that's a great example of what you said before, which is when we fail, we wrap it up into our identity. And I totally ate that in grad school. I ate it and embodied it. When I failed repeatedly, it was because I was bad at science and I wasn't working as hard as these people. And it was, and looking back now with the perspective, I'm like, why did I keep trying this experiment that they gave me to do? And I recognized it was never going to work. Why didn't I find some other path that I knew could be creative and work? But at the time I was like, well, everybody else got this to work. Why can't I do it? I'm just terrible at this.
Right. And that taps into the imposter syndrome, scourge that we all struggle with. I mean, even beyond grad school, a lot of people struggle with it.
I think, pardon me if this goes into a soapbox moment, but I think in a lot of ways where some people struggle with graduate school is, as you said, failure is inevitable as a graduate student. But the way, really the way our educational system is set up, at least in the United States, we don't really teach or encourage people and students to fail. Failure is not seen as a positive at all. The way you're graded or the way you're assessed is, you take tests and you get grades and you need the good grades to move on to the next level. And, we know, maybe we experience this too, students have a lot of anxiety surrounding doing well. Failure is not really an option. So a lot of times I would say, because as you mentioned, Deirdre, a lot of us were really high-performing students when we got into graduate school. Many graduate students probably haven't experienced real failure or really a situation where they didn't know the answer. And so it's kind of a weird situation where it's okay and expected to not know the answer. But I imagine it can be traumatic if you've never been encouraged or put in a situation where that's the norm.
Yeah, if your entire academic career is success after success, I got straight A's and I was a valedictorian, and then you get to graduate school and you're like, I can't get anything to work.
And then you get, desk rejected and your experiments don't work and yada yada.
Yeah, we've been there.
Because usually that means you did something wrong, right? You could have studied more, or you could have, it's something indictment on you. But in graduate school, you have nothing to do with, how many grants get not funded, get bad score? Well, it has nothing to do with the quality. Sometimes it's just
the system. Sometimes, like, there's so many inputs and not enough outputs.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't reflect on you as the scientist. It's kind of the whole picture.
It's the system, man.
It's the system. The oatmeal cartoon references Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who did a lot of the research about flow, like entering a flow state where you are so immersed in the task that you're in. You're not happy, you're not sad, you're not anything, but you are so immersed and involved that time passes quickly, and I think you get a deep sense of meaning from that. And I think if you can get that in your research, awesome. And it's not like you're giggling and having a great time, but that is the state you want to be in if you can find work that satisfies that.
That's how I feel every time I'm recording this podcast with you, Dan.
Great, Josh. Thank you. Me too. That could be the peach Hefeweizen, but who knows?
I'm sure it is. So, Deirdre, I guess to wrap it up, if there's anything you want graduate students or really anyone to take away from your article, what would that be?
I would tell grad students that you will face failure in your studies, no matter what you're doing. If you're a scientist, if you're not a scientist, if you're, any kind of graduate student, you're going to have some bad times. You're going to have some good times. Don't let anyone define what your worldview of happiness is, right? Don't let anyone define that for you, because that's for you to find. And it's not happiness, it's meaning. That's deeply personal to you. And it's not something that anyone can ever experience or tell you to feel. And I think I closed out my article with this sentence that I'm kind of embracing myself, actually. And it's thrive in unhappiness, right? Find meaning, and maybe not joy, but some sort of meaning in these unhappy moments that you experience.
It can be a personal satisfaction, even if it's not jubilation.
Exactly. You don't have to be, over the moon to have that experience.
The notion that lack of happiness doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't be doing something.
Exactly.
Parenting drives me crazy half the time, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to be a parent. Deirdre, anything else you want to say?
Check out Sizzle.
Tell us about Sizzle. So what is Sizzle? How'd you get connected with them?
I think I got an email from them, and they said they were accepting blog writers. And I really enjoy writing. I really enjoy writing about science. I'm the chief editor for UNC's Science Writing and Communication Club. So I'm all about that. So I took it as another opportunity to expand my my experience with writing for the sciences. And so I got in contact with Sizzle, and they pretty much said, send us an article. And it was kind of fortuitous. I found the Oatmeal's comic, the night before, and I was like, oh, well, I have a blog post idea for you, like right now.
Funny, that seems like how we come up with podcast ideas. It was the night before.
It was the night before podcast and all through the house. We needed something to talk about.
So Deirdre, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, man. I'm still deciding. For now, I'm going to stay a grad student and finish strong and focus on lab work for now and focus on finding meaning in it.
Whatever makes you happy, Deirdre. That's great.
That is great, except not. All right. All right, so Deirdre, I don't know if you've heard the show, but it is now time for our etymology puzzle.
Oh, boy.
And as our guest, you have to participate. No cheating.
I won't cheat.
No cheating. So the clue last week, suggested by Josh and ripped from this week's headlines, just when you thought your campaign was floating along, this type of inflammation could draw unwanted attention. And we're looking for a scientific word that is described literally in the clue. Josh, what do you have for us?
Any guesses, Deirdre?
Oh, man. So when I hear the word campaign, obviously it's, political election season.
It sure is.
And there was a particular incident a couple weeks ago involving a certain candidate. And I'm going to guess pneumonia.
That is the exact correct answer.
Ding, ding, ding.
And the literal meaning of pneumonia, we think of pneumo as meaning lung. So in the Greek, pneumon meant lung, but it came from plumon, which meant floater. So you got to imagine back in the day.
We got a floater.
Yeah, so back in the day, somebody is cutting up some dead animal, probably not a human, but
I hope not.
They're cutting up an animal. They're pulling out all this internal stuff that they have no idea what it does. This little chunk of thing floats, so we call it plumon, and eventually that turns out that was the lungs. It has air sacs in it, and so floating along, that was the clue. And of course, inflammation of the lung, pneumonia.
When I was in grad school, I studied type 2 pneumocytes.
There you go. Do they float?
Well, I don't know. They stuck to the bottom of the dish, so I'm not sure.
So no.
And what's the etymology on that word, pneumocyte?
There it is. It's
I'm guessing.
lung cell, right?
Lung cell. There you
it
go.
is.
That's where they came from.
This is why I do the etymology puzzles, so that I can do better on my GREs next time I take them, which will be never.
Hopefully never.
Yeah, exactly right.
They did not float, so they are not a witch.
Are you ready for the clue for next week, Josh?
I'm ready, Dan. Make this etymology puzzle great again.
Another. I don't think I can follow that. Okay, this is another one sort of hinted at in previous and recent episodes. This fast-walking ungulate looks like a cross between a camel and a leopard. I'll read it one more time. This fast-walking ungulate looks like a cross between a camel and a leopard. Remember, I'm looking for a scientific word described by the clue, and once you get it, you'll find the literal meaning of that science word as a phrase in the clue itself. If you think you know the answer, email it to puzzle@hellophd.com. I'll randomly select a winner from all the correct responses and send the lucky puzzler an Amazon gift card. This is a genus and species clue, so I need both.
Is it a zebra?
It is not a zebra. You're going to love the answer, Josh.
All right. Deirdre, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed your article, and it was very nice to have you here in the studio.
And thanks for changing it with a Hefeweizen. That was good, too.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
It's like a new world here for us. In
Zero
HelloPhD.
banana flavor.
Good.
In that Hefeweizen.
Good, because there's never any banana flavor in a Hefeweizen.
Probably aldehydes. Don't aldehydes smell like bananas?
Yeah, there is one of them that does.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah.
Too many aldehydes in your Hefeweizen.
But not this one.
No.
Science beer.
All right. If you have an idea for a future show or feedback on a past show, you can email us podcast@hellophd.com. You can reach out to us on Twitter @HelloPhD or get in touch with us on the Facebook page. If you'd like to support the show, help with the beer money, you can go to our website and click on the Amazon banner on the side of the page. You pay the same price you would normally pay at Amazon, but we get a little love, which we like. All right, Deirdre, where can people find you in the world?
So I'm at NeuroPhD, and that's PHDEE, because that's my nickname.
Oh, excellent.
I like
A
it.
clever little
Good
handle.
etymology on your Twitter handle.
All right, if you like the show, tweet to Deirdre. She would love that.
Tweet me.
All All right, guys, especially Dan. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in a couple weeks.
There was some magazine. Oh, like, is it Us Weekly? I thought it was US Weekly
Yeah,
for the longest
I
time.
totally did too.
Yeah, see?
Because it's
Oh.
letters.
But it's Us, right?
I think so.
I thought it was U.S. Weekly.
No, I think it's Us Weekly because I've heard other
man.
people
Well, and I love
who should know better.
I love People magazine.
I like
My-
Leaf A.
One of my
Leaf A and Team A. I read both. Okay. All right, Dan, we're rolling. So
okay.
I've been rolling for 30 minutes. Just kidding.
Uh-oh.
Welcome to Hello PhD.